Hello and welcome back to the NFL DFS slate breakdown for Thursday Night Football. We have the Commanders versus the Eagles. It's going to be a fun one tonight, and we are going to get into that game and break it down. I'm your host, Tyler Weeman, at FlatTyler83 on your DFS sites, and now let's get into it. But before we do, come join us at LineStar. There's a few ways to join us for free or very cheaply. First, the promo codes down there. We got Parlay Play, Sleeper, Underdog, Chalkboard. If you're a new customer to any of them, you just got to deposit at least $10 and play. You can get a free month. We also have free trials through the App Store, Android or iOS. Go through the App Store, get that free trial, and you can get 7 days for free. Now, let's get into it. We're going to hit it hard, hit it quick, and get it done. First thing I want to talk about is, so we have a 49-point game total in this, so pretty high game total. And that would lead you to believe that the defenses aren't very good, but that's just not the case in this situation. I think there is big time variance in the range of outcomes of this possible game. One of the things that I want to start off with is just to show you the differences of this defense over the last 10 games versus the last 5. You go to the last 10 games, Washington defense looks terrible. Saquon versus RB1, 29th versus RB1. Versus wide receiver 1, 30th versus wide receiver 1. But you go to last 5, 15th versus wide receiver 1, and 5th versus running back 1. So this Commanders defense has made huge strides. Meanwhile, on the Phillies side, they've actually been very solid versus wide receivers this year, which just wasn't the case last year. And it's, a pretty interesting spot because they have been good versus running backs for, a few years now. So we actually have two solid defenses going at each other, but we still have this 49-point total. And that probably goes to show you the difference these quarterbacks have to make with their legs. So let's dive in now and just go position by position, breaking it all down, starting with the quarterback. Now, we're going to stay on DraftKings today. The FanDuel pricings, ownerships are all very similar to DraftKings, so there's not much sense of breaking them all down. And obviously, you got to talk more depth chart here on DraftKings, so we're just going to do that. Now, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels are the two quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts has just been on an absolute insane run with rushing touchdowns lately. So over the last 3 weeks, he has 6 touchdowns. You go into the last 4 weeks, and that's 8 rushing touchdowns alone. He has just been on this crazy run with that. But it's one that is very, very hard to continue to see going. I mean, it's just that this pace is insane. Now, could he do it again? Yes, absolutely. They're great with the tush push. They're great with the brotherly shove, as they like to call it in Philadelphia. They're great, near the goal line with him, and he has a ton of ways to score. So you can absolutely still play Jalen Hurts, and you probably should, because not only does he have a huge ceiling, he has been very consistent this year. Now, it's not the greatest matchup in the world for quarterbacks, but that rushing upside is too legit to quit. Jaden Daniels now. He has been insane, but I want to point out one thing. Since he has got hurt, his rushing upside has dropped quite a bit. So he got hurt in this game versus Carolina. Next game out came with 8 for 52 yards, but then 8 for 35, and then 3 for 5. He has not been running the same, and I mean, it definitely is not helping his fantasy performances. If he does not start running, he just doesn't have the upside or the floor that you're really looking for. The issue here is that he's averaging 26 passes per game. Now, since that injury, it's not like his, attempts have really skyrocketed. Yes, he had a 34 and a 38 attempt game, which are two of his highest on the year. His other highest is 35 versus Baltimore, which they were down, and he had to throw a ton. So he's had his two highest attempt games, but he still does have a 22 attempt game sprinkled in, which they were, leading the whole time and really had the lead. The other two games, they were down for the whole game. So he had to throw a little bit more. Bottom line is it's a low volume passing attack. And if he's not rushing, he's just not going to get you there. So playing him tonight, you're counting on his rushing being back there. It just hasn't really been there the few games. Can that turn? Can that change today? Absolutely. But it is a short week. If he's still dealing with that nagging injury and doesn't want to run quite as much on a short week, I wouldn't be that surprised for it not to be back. But that is the one warning with Jaden Daniels. But he has been unbelievable this year, and it's been fun to watch him. If we go to the team defense tool, as you can see, Hurts, or over the last 10, Washington's 8th versus quarterback, whereas Philly's 2nd versus quarterback. And then we go to the last 5, and Washington jumps to 5th versus quarterback, and Philly is still 2nd. So not an easy spot, but we're definitely going to have to consider some quarterbacks, especially with a 49-point total. It's just wild that this total is this high with two defenses that have been performing so well. I think the range of outcomes for this game is huge, but I definitely do tend to the under in this spot. All right, getting over to running back, we got Saquon Barkley, 10.6K. So we got 2.4K more expensive than the running back one on Washington Commanders, being Brian Robinson Jr. Now, I 100% side with Saquon on this. He is too explosive and too good. We do still have a 5-star alert score on him. Washington on the season hasn't been great to running back. Yeah, they've been much better, but hey, Saquon Barkley is just a totally different beast, and I think there's very few guys in this game that we can count on scoring fantasy points. And I think those guys are, unfortunately, all Eagles, being A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts. I think the issue with Washington is they can have guys get there, but they just haven't had, consistent performance from anybody this year. And on the ground, I think it's going to be very tough for Brian Robinson. If we look at what the Eagles have been doing, 85 yards per game on the ground, 0.2 touchdowns. And that is where Brian Robinson has been scoring his fantasy points, is getting in the end zone. The chance of that today are just a little bit down. Now, can he still do it? Absolutely. They've let touchdowns go, just not very many. So can he get in the box? Yes, and it is kind of do or die for him to be, he's either optimal because he got in the end zone, or he's not optimal at all. There's really no in between there. And then Eckler, if the Eagles get to a decent lead, I think he has some upside. The thing I want to bring your attention to, without touchdowns, that touchdown upside that he's had the last 2 days is gone because Brian Robinson's there. Brian Robinson's going to take that goal line work. So he is back to just being the RB2. And in that scenario, I think you have kind of an upside of 15 points and a downside of like 5 or 6. I don't love the spot for Eckler, but I'm absolutely willing to have some, but it is a little game script dependent. On my Eckler teams, I'm probably going to have Jaden Daniels, probably going to have a wide receiver from Washington, because the script that makes sense for Eckler to be optimal is the Eagles are up big. Commanders have to throw to get back into the game. So in that scenario, you might want Barkley on the other side or A.J. Brown. You're going to want one of their studs that could have really affected the game in a positive way for the Eagles to blow it open early. As far as the other backup running backs, I just can't really get there. For me, it is really Brian Robinson, Eckler, or Saquon, or no running back. Now, moving over to the wide receiver spot, A.J. Brown is pretty much the only one I really, really can count on in this game. And even that, it's not like it's a great spot for him. But Brown has just been an absolute beast week in and week out. The only real bad game he had was versus Jacksonville when he got hurt. But he bounced back last week with 5 for 109. 5 for 85 is his other down game. Then after that, 5 for 89 and a tutty. 6 for 116 and a tutty. 5 for 119 and a tutty. A.J. Brown has just been an absolute beast, and I think that's going to continue. And he is one of the core pieces for me tonight, without a doubt. Devonta Smith, I'm fine if you want a little bit of him, but he just has way more range of outcomes, and that's why he isn't a core piece for me. I don't mind the salary saving with him, but Washington has been very good to wide receiver 2 all season long, not just the last 5, all season long. So I think it is a tough matchup for him, but I'm fine having a little bit. I'm just not going to go too hard. Now, on to the Washington Commanders side. Scary Terry has obviously been their primary focal point in this passing game. He's been very good. He's still only averaging 6.6 targets per game, and his production has mainly been through touchdowns. The guy has 6 touchdowns on the year, and he has been very, very solid, used a ton near the goal line. He's been consistent, but this is a very, very tough matchup for him. Over the last 4, opponent wide receivers versus the Eagles are only averaging 81.5 yards and 0.3 touchdowns per game. Now, that is all of the wide receivers, not just the wide receiver ones. Not a good look. Now, Scary Terry likely gets most of that, but this matchup is very hard for him. They're going to have to scheme him open, I believe. And this, low volume passing attack just doesn't bode well for him. Can he still do it? Yes. Just don't love the spot for him. Now, wide receiver 2, Noah Brown. He is the only other Washington wide receiver playing a ton. Last week, him and McLaurin both played like 89% of the snaps. He also has a very tough matchup, but at his price, I'm a little more willing to take some shots. And over the last 4 weeks, he's getting 5 targets a game. So similar to McLaurin, just slightly lower. And the matchup is also hard here, but not quite as hard for him. Then you go into the wide receiver 3, 4, 5. Luke McCaffrey is the wide receiver 3. He's playing, 30, 40% of the snaps. He definitely has a role in the offense. And the big thing here for me is if they're in a game script where they got to throw, other wide receivers are going to be on the field a little bit more. Now, their wide receiver 3, 4, 5 being McCaffrey, Diami Brown, and Zacchaeus. Those 3 really are interchangeable, and they switch these guys out a lot. All of them are pretty much playing between 30, 40%. It's not like one is up at 50 and the other guys are lower. They're really just changing these guys out. All of them are kind of a wide receiver 3. And it just splits kind of their workload out a little bit. I think you can take shots on any of them. But once again, playing all of these guys is kind of a game script play. So make your lineups with a game script, idea. Jahan Dotson, technically the wide receiver 3, but he's really been doing nothing. It is a revenge game, but he's done nothing all season long. So I think it's really hard at his price to really want to pay him. Johnny Wilson got used in the end zone, but outside of that, he is not going to be used. So moving over to the tight end position. Now, I do think the tight end position is a little interesting today, but still not the easiest matchup in the world. Dallas Goedert is my primary focus here on the tight end. He's getting work. He's averaging 5.8 targets over the last 4 weeks, 5.3 on the season. The one thing that I do think is interesting with him, though, all of his better games are away games. And if you look at his stats for his career, he is averaging almost 20 yards more per game when he is on the road than at home. So that doesn't look great for him, but he is still a big-time tight end, and he does have the better matchup of anybody for their spot. So it might be a little bit of the path of least resistance going through Dallas Goedert. On the other side, Zach Ertz is in a similar situation where it is a tough matchup for him, but Eagles haven't played a ton of really good tight ends. So, with that being said, I don't mind going with some Ertz, and he has been a very consistent part of this offense. He's averaging 6.3 targets per game over the last 4 games. That is similar to Terry McLaurin. He is the second target getter on this team. I am absolutely fine going with some Ertz. The one thing I do have to warn you with going with Ertz is he is not going to give you a ceiling unless he gets into the end zone. 11 targets, 7 for 77. He has no yak. Wherever he catches the ball, he pretty much falls down. So you really need a ton of targets to go his way to get you a ceiling type performance. And it's just not likely in this situation and in a low volume passing attack, which leads me to believe it's touchdown or bust for him. And it really comes down to touchdown or bust for all of the Washington players to get into the optimal lineup. It's not like the Eagles offense where it really flows through 2 guys. This Commanders offense is spread out a little bit more, which just makes it a little harder to figure out which Commander guys you want into their lineup. But Ertz is definitely in play. Bates and Sinwaa both play 20-30% of the snaps. They're not a huge part. Calcaterra Stoll also not a big part of the offense when Goedert is healthy. And let's get over to the defensive side. Look, both these offenses are low volume passing attacks. With that, I don't see huge upside in the defenses, but both defenses have been very stout. If they can create some sacks, create some fumbles, an odd interception, there is a path, but I don't love playing the defenses in, versus low volume passing teams. The upside just isn't quite there, and that is my one worry with them. I will have a little bit, but I'm not going super hard. The kickers, 100% in play today. Whenever you have a 49-point total and there's 2 solid defenses, the likelihood of games or of teams stalling when they get to the opponent's territory is much higher. So I would not be surprised at all if one of these kickers had 4+ field goal attempts. If that's the case, one is probably going to be optimal. Just which one, really hard to know. Elliott is probably the more consistent one. Zane Gonzalez is looks like he is going to play. Austin Siebert has been ruled out, so it is going to be Zane Gonzalez, who did have 3 extra points and 2 field goals last week, but he is a backup kicker. Jake Elliott, meanwhile, has been pretty solid, and I don't mind going to either guy. Just once again, make your lineup have a story and build that way. That'll do it for us today, guys. Hope you guys have a good one. Good luck. Let's make some money. See you guys later this week. Peace.